Captain Yoon Sora pressed her face against the cold metal of the observation window. The stars looked peaceful out there, but she knew better. Her ship, the Silent Dawn, had been watching the edge of human space for 3 months now. What she saw made her stomach turn. The alien ships were everywhere. Thousands of them, maybe more. They moved like dark shadows against the starlight, getting closer every day. The Vorthak Empire was preparing for something big. Yoon turned away from the window and walked to her command chair. Her crew worked quietly around her. Everyone knew what those ships meant. After 3,000 years of peace, war was coming again. Send the message to Earth, she told her communications officer. Tell Admiral Park that the enemy fleet is twice as big as we thought. The young officer nodded and started typing. Yoon watched him work and remembered the stories her grandmother used to tell. Stories about the old days when humans lived on many worlds across the galaxy, before the Vorthak came and destroyed almost everything. Back then, humans thought they were smart and strong. They had good ships and brave soldiers. But when the Vorthak attacked, humanity learned how wrong they were. The aliens were older, stronger, and much more cruel than anyone had imagined. The war lasted only 5 years, but it felt like forever. Human colonies burned one by one. Entire planets turned to ash. Billions of people died. In the end, only Earth and a few nearby worlds survived. Admiral Kim Tae-ho, the greatest human leader of that time, had to make a terrible choice. He could keep fighting and watch humanity die completely, or he could surrender and hope for mercy. He chose surrender and signed the Treaty of Exile. The treaty was simple and harsh. Humans could live, but only in one small corner of the galaxy. They could never leave the Sol system again. They could never build big armies or powerful weapons. In return, the Vorthak would leave them alone. For 3,000 years, that treaty held. Humans lived quietly in their small space. They grew food, built cities, and raised children. To the rest of the galaxy, they seemed weak and broken. The Vorthak forgot about them, thinking humans would never be a threat again. But the Vorthak were wrong. On Earth, in a deep underground room, Admiral Park Jin-woo read Yoon's message. His hands shook as he looked at the numbers. The enemy fleet was huge, bigger than anything seen since the old war. Park was 50 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes. His great-grandfather had been there when the treaty was signed. The family had kept the old stories alive, along with something else. A promise. A plan, sir, said his assistant Lena Young. She was young and brilliant. The best engineer humanity had ever produced. The council is ready to meet. Park nodded and stood up. The council chamber was hidden far below the surface in a place the Vorthak had never seen. 12 people sat around a metal table, all of them carrying the weight of humanity's future. The enemy is coming, Park said simply. Captain Yoon reports massive fleet movements. They're not just watching us anymore. They're preparing to attack. An old woman named Kim raised her hand. Are we sure? Maybe they're just moving ships around. Choi Min-soo, the head of intelligence, shook his head. Our spies inside Vorthak space confirm it. They call it the final solution. They want to finish what they started 3,000 years ago. The room went quiet. Everyone had known this day might come, but it still felt like a punch to the stomach. Why now? Asked another council member. We've been peaceful for so long. Because we've been too peaceful, Park answered. They think we're weak. They think we've forgotten how to fight. They're wrong about that, but they don't know it yet. Lena Young leaned forward. Sir, if they attack, we can't hide anymore. Everything we've built, everything we've planned. It all comes out. Park looked around the table at each face. These people had spent their whole lives preparing for this moment. Their parents had prepared, and their grandparents too. For 3,000 years, humanity had been getting ready. How long do we have? Park asked. 3 days, Choi said. Maybe less. They're sending a message tomorrow. Probably an ultimatum. Park closed his eyes and thought about all the secret places hidden throughout the solar system. The shipyards built inside asteroids. The weapons factories on the dark side of moons. The training bases where human soldiers learned to fight like their ancestors never could. The Vorthak thought humanity had spent 3,000 years being weak and afraid. Really, humanity had spent 3,000 years learning, planning, and building. They had studied every piece of alien technology they could find. They had prepared for every possible attack. Most importantly, they had remembered. Every human child learned about the burning worlds and the billions who died. Every human adult carried the anger and the promise of their ancestors. Never again would humanity bow to alien masters. Send the message to all hidden bases, Park said finally. Activate Protocol Resurgence. It's time to show the galaxy who we really are. Around the table, 12 people nodded. They had waited 3,000 years for this moment. The waiting was finally over. Far above them, Captain Yoon watched more alien ships arrive at the edge of human space. She smiled grimly and checked her weapons. The Vorthak thought they were coming to finish a broken enemy. Instead, they were about to wake up something they could never imagine. Humanity was done hiding. The galaxy was about to remember why humans had once been feared across the stars, and why they should have stayed forgotten. The 3,000-year truce was ending. But this time, humanity would not be the ones running away. The message came at dawn, just as Choi Min-soo had predicted. A massive Vorthak ship appeared at the edge of human space, its dark hull gleaming with weapon ports. The alien commander's face filled every screen across Earth and the human colonies. Humans, the Vorthak said, his voice cold and mechanical through the translator. You have grown too comfortable. Your technology has advanced beyond what the treaty allows. You have 72 hours to surrender all your ships and weapons. Refuse and we will finish what we started long ago. Admiral Park Jin-woo watched the message from his command center. Around him his staff waited quietly. They all knew what came next. Send our reply, Park said calmly. The communications officer looked surprised. Sir, what should I tell them? Park smiled, and for the first time in years he looked young again. Tell them no. The single word went out across space, reaching the Vorthak ship in seconds. Park could imagine the alien commander's face when he heard it. No Vorthak had heard a human say no in 3,000 years. All stations, Park said into his microphone. This is Admiral Park. Execute Protocol Resurgence. I repeat. Execute Protocol Resurgence. Across the solar system, humanity woke up. On the dark side of the moon, huge doors opened in what looked like empty craters. Shipyards that had been hidden for centuries came alive with light. Thousands of workers ran to their stations as massive ships began to move. In the asteroid belt, rocks that had floated peacefully for millennia split open like flowers. Inside each one was a warship built in secret and waiting for this moment. The ships were sleek and deadly, using technology the Vorthak had never seen. Commander Han Dong-hyun stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Iron Will. Around him, the First Strike Fleet was coming together. 200 ships that had been invisible minutes before now formed up in perfect formation. All ships report ready, his communications officer said. Han nodded. He was 40 years old and had trained his whole life for this moment. His grandfather had died in the old war, and Han carried that memory like a fire in his chest. Target the Vorthak forward bases, he ordered. Show them what 3,000 years of preparation looks like. The human ships moved like ghosts through space. They used new engines that bent space around them, making them faster than anything the Vorthak had ever built. They appeared next to alien outposts without warning, striking like lightning. At Titan Station, the Vorthak had built a massive fortress to watch human space. The alien commander there was eating his morning meal when the attack began. He looked up to see human fighters appearing out of nowhere, their weapons tearing through his defenses like paper. Pilot Shin Hye-jin flew her fighter, the Ghost Walker, through the battle with deadly grace. The Vorthak ships were big and powerful, but they were also slow and predictable. Her fighter danced around their weapons, striking and disappearing before they could respond. This is Ghost Leader, she said into her radio. Titan Station's shields are down. Beginning attack run on the main structure. Her fighter dove toward the alien fortress, its weapons charging. The Vorthak had built their station to withstand human weapons from 3,000 years ago. They had no defense against what humanity could build now. The Ghostwalker's main gun fired once. A beam of pure energy cut through the station's armor like it was made of paper. The fortress exploded in a ball of fire that could be seen from Mars. Target destroyed, Shin reported calmly. Moving to secondary targets. Back on Earth, Bai Kyung-min watched the battle from his laboratory. He was the head of quantum research, and his weapons were tearing apart Vorthak ships across the system. The aliens had never imagined that humans could learn to twist reality itself into a weapon. The quantum disruptors are working perfectly, he told Admiral Park. Their ships can't handle weapons that attack the basic structure of matter. Park nodded. watching as another Vorthak dreadnought simply came apart, its atoms forgetting how to stay together. What about their response? Confused and panicked, reported O.G. Hoon from intelligence. They're trying to call for help, but someone is jamming their communications. O smiled. For 50 years, he had been building resistance networks inside Vorthak space. Human agents had been placed in alien systems pretending to be traders or diplomats. When the fighting started, they had sabotaged communication stations and weapons factories across half the galaxy. "Sir," said a communications officer, "we're getting reports from all strike teams. Vorthak forward bases throughout the system have been destroyed. Enemy casualties are estimated at over 90%. Park allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The first phase was working perfectly, but he knew this was just the beginning. On the main screen, the Vorthak command ship was turning to flee. Its captain had finally understood what was happening. The weak, broken humans he had come to destroy were actually the most dangerous enemy the Vorthak had ever faced. "Let him go," Park ordered when someone suggested destroying the fleeing ship. "I want him to report back to his superiors. I want them to know what happened here." Commander Han's voice came through the speakers. "Admiral, my fleet is ready for Phase 2. All ships report minimal damage and full weapon loads." "Excellent," Park replied. "Begin the advance into Vorthak space. It's time to remind the galaxy what happens when you try to destroy humanity." The human fleet moved out, leaving the shattered remains of alien bases behind them. For 3,000 years, the Vorthak had believed they had broken humanity's spirit. They had been wrong about everything. As the ships jumped into faster-than-light travel, Admiral Park looked at a picture on his desk. It showed his great-grandfather, Admiral Kim Tae-ho, signing the treaty that had saved humanity's last survivors. The old man looked defeated and broken in the photo, but Park knew the truth. Kim Tae-ho had not been defeated. He had been planning. The treaty was not surrender. It was the first move in a game that lasted 3,000 years. "Sir," said Lena Young, "all hidden fleets report ready for deployment. We have over 10,000 ships available." Park smiled. 10,000 ships built in secret and crewed by humans who had never forgotten their anger. The Vorthak thought they were facing the same weak enemy they had beaten before. Instead, they were about to face humanity at its strongest, and this time there would be no treaty. This time there would be no mercy. The galaxy was about to learn a hard lesson about patience planning and the price of trying to destroy the human race. The Vorthak High Council met in emergency session for the first time in 800 years. Their great hall on the capital world of Vorthak Prime buzzed with angry voices as reports came in from across the galaxy. "Impossible," snarled General Thek, his forearms waving in disbelief. "Humans cannot have this many ships. We counted their fleet ourselves. They had maybe 50 vessels, all old and weak." Admiral Zek shook his massive head. "The reports are clear. They destroyed our forward bases with over 2,000 ships. Ships we have never seen before using weapons we do not understand." Supreme Leader Vak sat on his throne, listening to his commanders argue. He was old even for a Vorthak and had lived through the first human war. Back then the humans had been fierce fighters, but their technology was primitive. Now something had changed. "How many of our ships have we lost?" Vak asked quietly. The room fell silent. Admiral Zex looked at his reports and his face grew pale. 70% of our border fleet's Supreme Leader. The humans are advancing into our territory on 15 different fronts. Vak stood up slowly. "Mobilize everything. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier. The humans must be crushed completely this time." Far from Vorthak Prime, Admiral Kang Woo-jin studied the star maps in his command center. He was leading humanity's second fleet, and his job was to make the Vorthak think they were fighting ghosts. "Enemy fleet approaching Keth system," reported his sensor officer. "Looks like 300 ships," Kang smiled. The Vorthak were finally responding with serious force, but they still didn't understand what they were fighting. "Deploy the Hydra formation," he ordered. "Let them see 50 ships. When they attack, show them 200. His fleet moved into position. The Vorthak saw what looked like a small human force and attacked with confidence. But when their weapons fired, the human ships seemed to multiply. Ships appeared from behind asteroids, from inside gas clouds, from places that had looked empty moments before. Captain Im Soo-young commanded the battleship Eternal Vengeance, one of humanity's most powerful warships. She watched the Vorthak fleet charge toward what they thought was an easy target. "All weapons ready," she reported to Admiral Kang. "The enemy is moving into the trap." "Fire when ready," Kang replied. "Show them no mercy." The word mercy had become a bitter joke among human forces. The Vorthak had shown no mercy when they burned human worlds. They had shown no mercy when they killed billions of civilians. Now humanity would return the favor. The Eternal Vengeance's main gun spoke with the voice of thunder. Beams of energy that could crack planets cut through the Vorthak formation like swords through paper. Where the beams touched, alien ships simply ceased to exist. Enemy flagship destroyed, Im reported calmly, moving to secondary targets. The battle lasted less than an hour. When it was over, the Vorthak fleet was gone. Not defeated, gone. 300 ships reduced to metal dust floating in space. On the planet below, Vorthak civilians looked up at the sky in terror. For the first time in their history, they were seeing their mighty fleet destroyed by an enemy they had thought was harmless. Ryu Jae-sung sat in a secret broadcast station, preparing his psychological warfare campaign. He was a thin man with gentle eyes, but his words carried the power to break empires. "People of the galaxy," he said into the camera, "you have lived under Vorthak rule for thousands of years. You have been told that the Vorthak are strong and you are weak. Today you see the truth." His broadcast went out on every communication channel the Vorthak used. Images of burning alien ships filled screens across 100 worlds. Images of human fleets advancing like unstoppable storms. "The humans remember," Ryu continued. "They remember every world burned, every life lost. They remember, and now they have returned. The age of Vorthak rule is ending." On distant worlds, alien species that had served the Vorthak for generations began to whisper among themselves. If the mighty Vorthak could be defeated by the humans they had once nearly destroyed, what did that say about Vorthak power? Moon-Airi led her ghost brigade through the corridors of a Vorthak supply station. Her soldiers moved like shadows, their special suits letting them phase through walls and appear behind enemy lines without warning. "Target the ammunition storage," she whispered into her comm unit. "We want a fireworks show that can be seen from 3 star systems away." Her team moved through the station like deadly spirits. The Vorthak guards never saw them coming. One moment the aliens were at their posts, the next they were unconscious on the floor. Moon reached the main storage area and planted her charges. The explosives were human-made, designed to turn the Vorthak's own ammunition against them. When they went off, the station would destroy itself from the inside. "All teams report ready," came the whispers from her soldiers. "Execute," Moon ordered. The Vorthak supply station exploded like a small star. The blast was so bright it could be seen from the nearby planet, where Vorthak civilians stared up in shock. Their mighty empire's supply lines were being cut by enemies they couldn't even see. Back on the Eternal Vengeance, Captain Im received new orders from Admiral Kang. Her next target was Keth Prime, one of the most important Vorthak fortress worlds, sir, her weapons officer said. "Intelligence reports that planet has never been successfully attacked. Its defenses are legendary. I'm looked at the tactical display showing the massive shield, generators and weapon platforms protecting Keth Prime. Any other enemy would see it as impossible to capture. But I'm remembered her grandmother's stories about Earth's cities burning under Vorthak bombardment. She remembered the millions who had died while alien ships rained fire from above. Target the shield generators," she ordered. "We're going to show them what legendary defenses mean to someone who's been planning this attack for 3,000 years. The human fleet moved toward Keth Prime like a hurricane of metal and energy. The planet's defenders opened fire with everything they had, filling space with deadly light. But the human ships danced through the weapons fire like they were dancing through raindrops. Their shields held against attacks that should have destroyed them. Their weapons cut through defenses that had never been breached. "Planet shields are failing," reported the sensor officer. Im nodded. "Begin orbital bombardment. Make sure they understand what it feels like to watch your world burn." The Vorthak on Keth Prime looked up to see human ships filling their sky, just as humans had once looked up to see Vorthak ships over Earth. The tables had turned completely. Admiral Kang watched the battle reports coming in from across the galaxy. Human fleets were winning everywhere, and the Vorthak Empire was starting to crack. Several alien species that had served the Vorthak were switching sides, offering to help humanity in exchange for protection. They had seen which way the war was going, and they wanted to be on the winning side. "Sir," said his communications officer, "we're receiving surrender offers from 12 Vorthak colonies. They want to negotiate." Kang thought about it for a moment. 3,000 years ago, humans had tried to surrender and negotiate. The Vorthak had refused and kept killing. "Tell them we'll accept their surrender," he said finally. "But the terms are simple. Complete and unconditional. No negotiations." As he spoke, more reports came in. The Vorthak Empire, which had ruled the galaxy for millennia, was falling apart in just weeks. And this was only the beginning. Humanity had waited 3,000 years for this moment. They were going to make it count. Supreme Commander Song Hyun-woo stood on the bridge of humanity's greatest warship, the Rising Phoenix. Through the massive windows, he could see the Vorthak home system spread out before him like a broken toy. 3 months had passed since the war began. 3 months of human victories and Vorthak defeats. Now Song was leading the final assault on Vorthak Prime itself, the heart of the empire that had once nearly destroyed humanity. "All fleets report ready," said Captain John Yu-jin, the flagship's commander. She was young for such responsibility, but she had proven herself in a dozen battles. 10,000 ships in attack formation, Song nodded. 10,000 human ships surrounding the world that had sent the order to burn Earth. The irony was not lost on him. "Begin the attack," he ordered quietly. The Battle of the Seven Suns began with a sound like the universe tearing apart. The Vorthak had gathered every ship they could find to defend their homeworld. Over 15,000 alien vessels formed a massive shield around their planet. But the humans had learned much in 3,000 years. They no longer fought like the desperate survivors who had fled burning worlds long ago. Now they fought like apex predators who had finally found their prey. Captain John commanded the Rising Phoenix with deadly precision. The massive ship cut through the enemy formation like a sword through silk. Its weapons had been designed specifically to destroy Vorthak technology, and they did their job perfectly. "Enemy dreadnought destroyed," reported the weapons officer. "Their flagship is attempting to retreat." "Let it go," Song said. "We want survivors to remember this day." Around them, the human fleet moved like a living thing. Ships appeared and disappeared, struck and vanished, overwhelming the Vorthak defenders with tactics they had never seen before. On Vorthak Prime below, civilians crowded around communication screens, watching their mighty fleet die in the space above their heads. Many of them had never imagined that their empire could be defeated. Supreme Leader Vok stood in his palace, watching the battle through his own screens. His forearms shook with rage and fear as ship after ship winked out of existence. "How many reserves do we have?" he demanded. "None, Supreme Leader," his aide replied. "This is everything. Every ship in the Empire is here." Vok's face went pale. For 3,000 years, the Vorthak had been the strongest force in the galaxy. Now they were watching their power crumble in a single day. On the human flagship, Kwon Min-ho prepared for the most important diplomatic mission in galactic history. As head of the human diplomatic corps, he would soon be accepting the surrender of the Vorthak Empire. But first, there was one more mission to complete. Commander Park Yoon-seo led her Reaper squadron through the chaos of battle toward the planet's surface. Her ships were small and fast, designed for one purpose: to hunt down the Vorthak leaders who had ordered humanity's near extinction. "Target the Imperial Palace," she ordered her pilots. "Remember, we want the leaders alive. They have debts to pay." The Reaper squadron dove through the planet's atmosphere like falling stars. The Vorthak had powerful ground defenses, but they had been built to stop conventional attacks. Park's ships used the same phasing technology as the Ghost Brigade, letting them pass through solid matter. They materialized inside the Imperial Palace itself, their weapons trained on shocked Vorthak guards. The aliens had never imagined that enemy ships could appear inside their most secure building. "Surrender," Park announced through her ship's speakers. "Your empire is defeated. Your fleets are destroyed. Give up now and you will live to face trial." Supreme Leader Vok appeared on a balcony above them, his face twisted with rage. "Never," he screamed. "Vorthak do not surrender to inferior species." Park looked up at him calmly. She was 35 years old, and every day of her life had been shaped by the stories of what the Vorthak had done to humanity. Her great-grandmother had died when Earth was bombed. Her family had carried that pain for generations. "You're right," she said softly. "Vorthak don't surrender, but you're about to learn what happens when you try to destroy a species that refuses to die." Her squadron's weapons powered up, filling the palace with deadly light. The ancient building began to shake as human technology tore through walls that had stood for thousands of years. In space above, the battle was reaching its end. The last Vorthak ships were fleeing or surrendering. Captain Jian watched them go and felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and sadness. "It's over," she told Supreme Commander Song. "The Vorthak fleet is finished." Song nodded. "Signal all ships to cease firing. Prepare for occupation duties." Across the galaxy, other human fleets were accepting the surrender of Vorthak colonies and allies. The empire that had ruled for millennia was collapsing in hours. Quan Minho's diplomatic ship landed on Vorthak Prime's main spaceport. As he walked down the ramp, he was met by a crowd of alien officials, all of them looking defeated and afraid. "I am Quan Minho, representing the Human Coalition," he announced. "I am here to accept your unconditional surrender." An old Vorthak general stepped forward. His armor was damaged, and his face showed the shock of total defeat. What are your terms?" Quan pulled out a datapad and began to read. "All Vorthak military forces will lay down their weapons immediately. All conquered worlds will be freed and given the right to choose their own governments. War criminals will be turned over for trial by the species they harmed." The Vorthak general's face went even paler. "And our people? Our worlds? Will be treated with the mercy you never showed others," Quan replied. "Which is to say, they will live, they will be fed, and they will be given the chance to build a better society." It was more kindness than the Vorthak had ever shown their enemies, and everyone present knew it. Commander Park emerged from the ruined palace, escorting a group of Vorthak leaders in restraints. Supreme Leader Vac was among them, his eyes filled with hatred and disbelief. "The debt is paid," Park announced to her squadron. 3,000 years of planning, 3,000 years of preparation. Our ancestors can finally rest. As the sun set on Vorthak Prime, human ships filled the sky like bright stars. The galaxy's greatest empire had fallen in less than 4 months, destroyed by the species they had tried to wipe out. Supreme Commander Song stood on his flagship's bridge, looking down at the conquered world. A communications officer approached him with a message. "Sir, we're receiving surrender offers from every remaining Vorthak territory. They're asking for the same terms as the homeworld." Song nodded. "Accept them all. But make sure they understand this is not a negotiation. This is justice." The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. Humanity had proven they could destroy their enemies. Now they had to prove they could build something better. But as Song watched the defeated Vorthak leaders being led away in restraints, he felt a deep satisfaction. The species that had nearly destroyed humanity was now completely at human mercy. And unlike the Vorthak, humans knew how to use that power wisely. President Lim Jong-suk walked through the halls of the new Galactic Senate building on Earth. The structure was beautiful, built from materials donated by 100 different worlds. Representatives from across the galaxy had come here to create something that had never existed before, a government based on cooperation instead of conquest. 6 months had passed since the fall of Vorthak Prime. 6 months of difficult decisions, careful planning, and hard work. The easy part, destroying the Vorthak Empire, was over. The hard part, building a lasting peace, was just beginning. "Mr. President," said his aide, "the morning reports are ready." Lim took the datapad and read as he walked. Reconstruction efforts were ahead of schedule on 47 worlds. Former Vorthak colonies were setting up democratic governments with human help. The war crimes trials were proceeding fairly and openly. Most importantly, there had been no major conflicts in 3 months. The galaxy was learning to live in peace. Admiral Cho Mi-jung commanded the new peacekeeping fleet from her flagship, the Harmony. Her ships patrolled trade routes and protected smaller worlds from pirates and raiders. It was very different from the war fleets that had crushed the Vorthak Empire. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "we have a distress call from the Kelton system. Raiders are attacking a supply convoy." Cho nodded. "Set course for Kelton, maximum speed." The Harmony and her escort ships jumped into faster-than-light travel. They arrived at Kelton to find a group of former Vorthak soldiers attacking civilian ships. The raiders thought they could return to the old ways of taking what they wanted by force. They were wrong. The peacekeeping ships surrounded the raiders without firing a shot. Cho opened a communication channel to the enemy leader. "This is Admiral Cho of the Galactic Peacekeeping Fleet," she said calmly. "You are attacking civilian ships in violation of galactic law. Surrender now and you will be treated fairly. The raider captain laughed. Humans, you think you can control the galaxy with your pretty words about peace? We are Vorthak. We take what we want. Cho sighed. Some people never learned. Very well, she said. All ships disable the raiders. Non-lethal force only. The human ships moved with the same deadly precision they had shown in the war. But now their weapons were set to stun rather than kill. The raiders found their ships helpless in minutes, their weapons offline and their engines dead. Raiders neutralized, reported Cho's weapons officer. No casualties on either side. Cho nodded. The old human war fleets would have destroyed the raiders completely. But the peacekeeping force was different. They had learned that true strength came from protecting the weak, not from crushing enemies. On the planet Keth Prime, Nam Sung-ho supervised the rebuilding of the world's capital city. The planet had been heavily damaged in the war, but now it was becoming something beautiful. Human engineers worked alongside former Vorthak civilians to build new homes and schools. The children of both species played together in parks where monuments honored all who had died in the long conflict. The new hospital will be finished next month, reported his assistant. It will serve both human and Vorthak patients. Nam smiled. A year ago, humans and Vorthak had been trying to kill each other. Now they were working together to heal the wounded and build a better future. A young Vorthak approached him shyly. She was maybe 12 years old, with the large eyes and soft features of her species' children. Mr. Nam, she said in careful English, I wanted to thank you for helping us rebuild our school. Nam knelt down to her level. You're welcome. What's your name? Zila, she replied. My teacher says humans used to be our enemies, but you don't seem like enemies. Nam thought carefully about his answer. We were enemies because some people chose war instead of peace. But that's over now. Now we're all working together to make sure it never happens again. Zila nodded seriously. My grandmother says humans are very wise. She says you could have destroyed us all, but you chose to help us instead. Your grandmother is a smart woman, Nam said. Remember what she told you. Wisdom isn't about being strong enough to destroy your enemies. It's about being strong enough to turn them into friends. In the former Vorthak capital, Ambassador Hong Jia-young met with representatives from the Centauri Alliance, a group of worlds that had served the Vorthak Empire for over 1,000 years. We want to join the Galactic Republic, said their leader, an insect-like being named Crix. But we are afraid. Our people served the Vorthak for so long. How do we know you will not punish us? Hong understood their fear. Many species had helped the Vorthak because they had no choice. Now they worried that humanity would seek revenge. The Galactic Republic judges people by their actions today, not their past, she said gently. If you want to join us in building a peaceful galaxy, you are welcome. Your past service to the Vorthak is forgiven. Crix's compound eyes showed relief. You are very generous. The Vorthak would never have forgiven their enemies. That's why the Vorthak lost, Hong replied. Empires built on fear and hatred always fall eventually. But societies built on cooperation and trust can last forever. President Lim stood before the Galactic Senate, looking out at representatives from over 1,000 worlds. Humans sat next to former Vorthak civilians, who sat next to species that had been enslaved for millennia. All of them were equals now. 6 months ago, he began, this galaxy was ruled by fear. The strong took from the weak, and the weak had no voice in their own fate. Today, we begin something new. He held up a document covered with signatures in hundreds of different languages and scripts. The new Galactic Charter, he announced, a promise that never again will one species dominate another, a promise that all beings have the right to live free from fear and oppression. The Senate chamber erupted in applause that seemed to go on forever. Representatives who had been enemies just months before stood and cheered together. Admiral Cho watched the ceremony from her ship, which was patrolling the edge of the galaxy. Her sensors had detected something interesting in the past few weeks. Human exploration ships pushing beyond the galactic rim, heading for distant star clusters that no one had ever visited. Where are they going? Her sensor officer asked. Cho smiled. Looking for new friends, I imagine. Humanity has learned that the galaxy is a big place, and there's always room for one more friend. Deep in space, beyond the edge of the galaxy, Captain Yoon Sora commanded one of those exploration ships. The Silent Dawn had been rebuilt and upgraded, and now it carried a very different mission. Her ship's long-range sensors had detected signs of intelligent life in a distant star cluster. Not weapons or warships, but cities and farms and the peaceful activities of a civilization that had never known war. Signal them, Yoon ordered her communications officer. Tell them we come in peace. Tell them about the Galactic Republic and the new charter. Tell them they have friends here. As the message went out across the void, Yoon thought about how much had changed. 3,000 years ago, humanity had been nearly destroyed by aliens who saw them as a threat. Now humanity was reaching out to new species, offering friendship instead of conquest. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson about the price of trying to destroy those who refused to die, but it had also learned a better lesson about the rewards of choosing cooperation over conflict. On Earth, in the deep archives where the old treaty documents were kept, historians carefully preserved the records of humanity's exile and return. Future generations would read about the 3,000-year plan and the species that refused to stay defeated. But the most important lesson was written in the stars themselves, where human ships patrolled trade routes and protected the weak, where former enemies worked together to build new worlds, where children of 100 species played together without fear. Humanity had returned to the galaxy not as conquerors, but as guardians. They had proven that the strongest species was not the one that could destroy its enemies, but the one that could turn enemies into friends. The 3,000-year truce was over. The age of galactic peace had begun. And somewhere beyond the edge of known space, human explorers were already reaching out to the next species that needed to learn that they were not alone in the universe. The galaxy was vast, full of wonders and mysteries and new friends waiting to be discovered. And humanity, patient and wise and stronger than ever, was ready to explore it all.